10, the reproduction of the 1910 Hudson Flyer, sometimes called Albany Flyer, which is the one that Curtis flew from Albany to New York City in 1910, which was, I believe, the second leg of the Scientific American trophy, and was for a prize to go from Albany to New York City, or the other way around. He took it as going from Albany to New York City. And later on, or kind of in the same time frame, with a different set of wings and a different aileron setup, and a few other things different on it. It was the first one to make a temporary deck carrier takeoff, and on another occasion, the first one to make a carrier landing. And the Navy's interested in this one, and our A1, which was a reproduction of the first U.S. Navy airplane, for to participate in the 2011 Centennial of Naval Aviation. And we're planning on taking the two airplanes to at least Pensacola and San Diego to help them celebrate that event. And we've even gone so far as to think of making a carrier takeoff and landing with the Hudson Flyer. Like we're kind of thinking how we'd make an arresting hook for it. And the arresting setup, we have real good photographs of the original one. And they did it with ropes and sandbags. Sandbag at the end of the rope, and there were several ropes. And this arresting hook on the airplane didn't catch the first one, it caught the third or fourth one, and you can see where it's dragged the sandbags in and stopped, and it stopped. And according to the picture, it stopped kind of in the nick of time because there's a blur of one of the sailors trying to get out of the way of it. So they had that figured out pretty good. We would do this on hopefully in San Diego on one of the large carriers, whatever happens to be in town at that time. But that's got a long enough deck you could probably do touch and go several times on it without using up the deck. But that's in the wind, and we're looking to do that. We expect to test fly it this spring, 2010, and I would guess we're probably in the late May, June time frame to do that. And depending on how well it behaves, we'll see what we can do as far as at least a partial trip down the Hudson this summer to reenact the 1910 flight, and then who knows from there on. But it should fly, according to the literature, it flew pretty well. It's a long coupled airplane. That is, it's long from bow to stern for its width, like a lot of the other airplanes weren't. And it should be a pretty stable flying airplane. Go ahead.
Where was this airplane in relation in the evolution of Curtis's different planes?
It's real early. The June bug was 1909, 8 or 9, and this is 1910. So there weren't too many airplanes that he built before this one. Darn few. Certainly less than half a dozen. So this is kind of primitive. It's the most primitive one we've worked on as far as and tried to fly. It's the earliest one before was the 1911 A1, the Navy reproduction of the first Navy plane. So this is a year newer than that, or a year previous to that in technology. It's got some kind of neat features. The pitch axis is controlled by the front elevator. We don't have the control rod in it now, but the pitch axis is controlled by the yoke in a kind of a conventional manner, that there's a stick that goes from here up to that top of the elevator. And that's pitch control, and the back elevator is ground adjustable fixed. So that one doesn't enter into the picture, where in the A1 the next year, both of these elevators, the front one, which you could call a canard or a box kite elevator, and the rear one were controlled by the yoke. So this is different from the 1911 airplane from that. The wheel in this one controls the rudder, and that's the same as in the A1. And then the shoulder yoke, which was typical of all the early Curtis airplanes, and I just dropped a piece over there, and this is locked up, but you lean toward the high side to give you roll control. And the mid-wing ailerons operate one up and one down as you lean into it. And this airplane was built 2 years before the turnbuckle was invented. And so this one has the adjustment on the standing rigging is a motorcycle wheel spoke and spoke nut right here, and then you shorten up the spoke and wrap it around itself and then make a joint here. This, of course, is before you had micro presses, and this is a piece of copper tubing flattened, run around the wires. The wire runs down, back, and then the bitter end of it goes on the outside of the copper tubing, then you solder it all together. And we tested these to 400 pounds, and they take that, and the maximum tension on the wires is more in the neighborhood of 100. So it's a pretty safe little unit. We have a drawing of this. The original Curtis drawing shows this assembly, this adjustment assembly. But that's after 1912, then everything is turnbuckles. But this has got that feature. We've tried to stick with the original materials with the exception of the fabric. The modern epoxy glue, all the wood parts are put together with, and the fabric is Consolidated Aircraft Coatings polyfiber, which is a heat shrinkable Dacron that you shrink with a clothes iron. And this material is donated by our friends at Consolidated Aircraft Coatings, and it's almost fireproof. It's a lot more fireproof than the old doped cotton or linen systems, and we've departed from the original to do that, and we admit doing that, but it's more of a safety, and actually the cotton material is really not available anymore. It's any good, and this stuff meets modern fabric airplane covering standards, and it's very nice to work with. So we do that. Everything else, the materials, the spruce, Sitka spruce for the struts, the bamboo is the same. In fact, the bamboo is from Bamboo and Rattan Works in Lakewood, New Jersey, and they're the outfit that supplied Curtis originally in 1910. It's a family company that's 4 generations, and they're neat people to deal with. We went down to select this, and they've got pictures of bamboo airplanes all over their office, so they knew exactly what we wanted. And it's a very strong, lightweight material. The only thing we do to it is we put these bands on it to help prevent it from splitting, but if the bamboo wants to split, it's going to split anyway. But it doesn't lose a lot of strength if it splits, but we're doing that, and that helps. And also the Bamboo and Rattan Works people recommended we rough the surface up and varnish it as soon as we get it, so we've done that. The material is dirt cheap. It's just hellishly strong and works good for an airplane. This one, by the time, I mean, this is kind of, you can shake the whole thing now, but by the time we get everything tautened up, there won't be any wiggle to it. It'll be a pretty rigid airplane. It's standing on its own wheels now. It's final. We'll line it, make the wings parallel to ground with a optical level, and that's been done. It's sitting on its 3 wheels there. The design of it was done by a couple of guys that work with us that are computer savvy on the AutoCAD systems, and they've taken the original photographs and the original literature and studied it real carefully and come up with the design. So we think we're going to be pretty accurate as far as what it originally was. But nobody around to tell us that we're wrong, so we're safe in saying it's very much like the original.
I noticed there's no steering on the
No, there's
wheel
no nose
carriage.
wheel steering. It's steered strictly by speed, and on the ground it'll be the rudder, and that'll be the first thing we'll test to see how it behaves as far as going in a straight line or